introduction that was so flattering that it is pretty doubtful that I will fulfill everybody's expectations. So I am even more, it is even more stressful and I am even more confused. But let's start from the beginning. My name is Agnieszka Traczewska. This is how it sounds in Polish. Earlier this day, we were talking about my name. If you want to be an acclaimed photographer, traveling abroad and being recognizable, you can't have the name Agnieszka Traczewska, but it happened. Very often I am described as a woman or a Goya who is photographing Hasidim, and if anybody will have a problem with repeating my name, I forgive you totally because I'm totally used to. I live in Krakow, Kruke in Yiddish. I was born here and I'm still living here. Of course, this is Poland. And jumping into the subject we will talk about, this is Galicia. This is Galicia, so historical, a very well-known region, before the Second World War, rich with Jewish inhabitants. There were two major cities in Galicia. That was Lamberg, which was regarded as capital of Galicia, and Kruke. Lamberg, now Lviv, is Ukraine. As you remember, after the Second World War, our borders were changed, and a big part of Poland now belong to Ukraine. So also many places connected with Hasidic tradition now are located in Ukraine. But still, Poland is the place where Hasidim, who are descendants of Hasidim born and lived in Poland before the Second World War, are traveling. There are pilgrims now here, mostly coming for Yortzites. This is anniversary of somebody's death. Of course, according to custom, when there is a Yortzeit of the member of the family gathers around the grave, praying, trying to connect with the neshama of the person, of the relative. But you can imagine the scale of the crowd when it comes to the Yortzeit of a great tzaddik. The founder of dynasty, the person who even during his life was so holy that he was somewhere in between earth and heaven, having this unbelievable ability to translate to his followers the Hashem's thoughts or intentions or ideas after the tzaddik death. Of course, he has still the status of the person who inspires and is an advocate of his followers at Hashem. So still, many people, many Hasidim, from all over the world, from Australia through Canada and United States and Israel, come to Poland to express their wishes, to leave the Kvitlach, where it is written the name of the person who prays, his requests. Very often also his thanks for everything what was fulfilled already in the past. And this is essential to be in this place during that time, because according to belief, the neshama descending exactly where the body was birthed. And in spite of the Second World War and the Holocaust and the fact that everybody who managed to survive moved from Eastern Europe, also Poland, to Israel and to States and to other parts of the world, the cemeteries and ashes of those who were buried here, of course, remained in Poland. And
how did you first come across them? How did you start this whole project? How did you get into the whole idea of, oh, look, these are interesting people. I want to learn about it. I want to share it with the world.
So, of course, I could say that was just by the chance, but Hasidim don't believe in chances. They believe that everything is happening for the reason. And after all this time, when I started to be so busy with recovering the memory of Hasidim in my country, I also had the feeling that was made for the reason. But coming back to the point, I was an adult person. I was a pretty successful film producer. Many of films, documentaries I produced were about Polish history, also Jewish history, but not Hasidische. There were many about culture, about decent individuals like artists and philosophers. So at the point when I first met with Hasidim, I had the feeling that I knew that nothing will surprise me. That I am mature, I am adult, and more or less I expect what can happen in my life in the next, let's say, 50 years. And a friend of mine, a Jewish girl, told me during one of our meetings, you like photography, you make photographs at your film sets. Maybe that would be interesting for you to travel to Lizhensk, to Lezhaysk, where there is a tomb of Rabbi Elimelech, one of the most important fundamental founders of Hasidism. Because annually there is really a decent crowd of Hasidim who travel there, and for your camera, it might be really interesting. So not knowing anything about what I will face, I took my car, I drove 4 hours in rain, in cold, because Rabbi Elimelech Yortzeit is usually in the beginning of April. So regarding its Poland, it's cold and it's really a nasty weather. So I was traveling for 4 hours, and at the end, I stopped at the market square in Lizhensk, which didn't change a lot since the Second World War. This is still, let's say, shtetl-like architecture, the typical landscape of small villages and towns in Poland. And that was empty because it was almost dusk. All of a sudden, I saw the silhouette of a man in talit, in a praying show, approaching to the market square from one of the narrow streets leading to market square like a star. And that was the first Hasid who I saw in my life, and it should be exotic. But that was exactly the opposite. I had the feeling that this silhouette, which at once reminded me the black and white pictures from before the war, which of course I knew more or less. So I had the feeling that this silhouette completes this Polish landscape, that this is this lacking puzzle, which I can't say that I was looking for, but all of a sudden I had the feeling that I saw something absolutely unusual, the harmony of the space around me. I followed this guy. He was going towards Rabbi Elimelech Oyel and at the cemetery, and I saw the crowd of, let's say, hundreds. Maybe there was even a kind of 1,000 Hasidim. And I need to say that was surprising, that was bizarre, that was enlightening, that was heartwarming, everything in the same time, because all of a sudden I saw this place as probably it looked something like 100 years ago.
Can you show us something that can illustrate that? Do you have a picture that?
Yes, sure. In the same time, I understood that they are contemporary people. This is Dinov. This is 1 hour from Lizhensk.
What years are we talking about when you were doing this? 2005. Yes. How long ago was this?
This is 2008.
Okay.
This is another place, which is Lelov. This is your side of the David Biderman. This is also Lelov. Okay, this is Rimanov and the yahrzeit of Rabbi Menachem Mendel. This is Tzanz and yahrzeit of Divrei Chaim. So coming back to the point, I will show you just from time to time the pictures from various yahrzeits in Poland, okay? If you want me to stop and say something more about picture, of course, anytime. So coming back to the Lizhensk, I understood that those people are not frozen in time. They are contemporary people. And they came from somewhere here for the reason. The problem was that as a Pole, I thought that I was pretty educated in the history of Poland. Unfortunately, during the communist times, when I was in my primary school and secondary school and at my university, nobody really taught us about the Jewish chapter of Polish history. So, of course, I've heard that there were some Jews. And of course, later on, after my school, I learned that there were many people who were important for Polish history, who died during the Shoah. But in fact, there was nothing about Hasidim, about religious Jews, and about the fact that everything what was important for Hasidism from the very beginning, from the scratch, was born in the territory of Poland. Of course, not Poland in contemporary borders, but in second half of 18th century, when Baal Shem Tov, regarded as a founder of Hasidism, was active in Wołyń and Podolia, that was Poland. And when the wave of Hasidism started to spread, that was spread towards Poland, towards Galicia. Lithuania rejected Hasidism. After Poland, that was Romania, that was Hungary. So, for example, living in Krakow, I was 5 minutes walking distance from 9 synagogues, from the Remul cemetery with the grave of Moses Isserles, another extremely important figure for Hasidic teachings. So all of a sudden, it occurred that when I am digging in my memory where I was traveling with my parents for our holidays, I'm thinking about Bobov, about Rimanov, about Lublin, about Lelov, and all of those places were essential for the history of Hasidism, and nobody told us a word about it. There was no plaque, there was no memory, nobody was talking about it. I had the feeling that this chapter of Polish history was to be erased. And it was shocking. For me, as an adult person, that was shocking because I felt cheated. I felt that somebody made a decision, not asking me about an opinion, if I want or not, to erase the multicultural and multinational identity of Poland. Because before the Second World War, Poland was the country which really included so many nations. Lemks, Boyks, Russian, German, but most of all, Jews. 3.5 million Jews were living in Poland before the Second World War. When you are in Yad Vashem and you are seeing the numbers of Jewish population in various countries before the Second World War, there's something like, let's say, Germany and France, and let's say Romania and Hungary, and all of a sudden you have such a skyscraper, and this is Poland. Elie Wiesel was saying that you can kill the same person twice. First time when you are killing him physically, but the second time when you are erasing the memory. And I decided that I will change that in my tiny micro scale with my camera.
So there are many people are asking about the fact that we have the understanding, at least in this country, that Hasidim are at best camera shy, and at worst it's against their beliefs to have their pictures taken. And so there are at least half a dozen, if not more, comments here about the fact that you seem to have great access. What is that? How did that happen? Vis-a-vis the fact that we usually don't understand them to allow their pictures to be taken. And also most of the pictures that you've been showing us, and again, I know which one I want to buy. I'll tell you later. But most of the pictures that you've been showing are of men, and you're a woman. And well, yes, I know there are pictures of women as well. And there's this great one of a baby in a sink. Wait till we see that one.
Yes, but this is some other chapter. This is
we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
Let's
how did
stay
they
with
react?
your thoughts for a moment. Okay,
how did they react to you as a woman in these spaces?
Okay, so that's very important to
understand. Did the men speak to you? And did the men speak to you? People want to know.
Uh-huh. Okay, so at once we jump into intimate questions. Yes. Okay. Okay, so let's jump into obstacles, because from the very beginning I understood that my project, which please understand at the very beginning was totally personal, private archaeology. As I said, I had the feeling that somebody was to be hidden. I said, no, I don't agree for that. And I start to dig. I start to make my homework. First of all, I wanted to know something more about the history of Hasidism, to understand why those people are coming back here. They are not only traveling, they are coming back. My first book is titled Returns. Although characters from my book were born in New York or in Jerusalem, they are coming back to their ancestors' homelands. So in a way, their tides are still active. This is also their homeland. And because Hasidism, by definition, are very tied to history and tradition, to rescue their identity, what was the most important after the Second World War, when everything has changed. When they moved, when they didn't live in Bobov or Przeworsk or Góra Kalwaria or Alexandrov anymore, and still they wanted to save their identity. So even when they are living in, let's say, New York, they are still called themselves Bobovers and Slonim and Bells. All of those names are taken from those small places in Eastern Europe where those dynasties were born, where the tzaddikim were living. So after making my homework, and it wasn't easy because there was nothing like a literature available, at least in Polish. So I was looking for informations, and it was step by step what I was doing. First of all, I wanted to know if Rabbi Elimelech was the only one tzaddik. I had no clue. Now I can mention at least, I don't know, let's say 40 important founders of Hasidism living in Poland. Then I didn't know. So first of all, I was looking for somebody else. It occurred that there are many. I was looking for places where they were living and when they were buried. After that, I needed to know what were dates, because Yahrzeit is happening this one particular day. And all of a sudden, I realized that the Latin calendar is not a Jewish calendar. The Jewish calendar is lunar, so also dates are moving. After that, I needed to know if this particular tzaddik dynasty has continuation. So if there is anybody who potentially will be back. So if I'm traveling, for example, I'm driving for 4 days, for 4 hours, doesn't have a reason or not, or I will be waiting at some abandoned cemetery at a sandy crossroad for a day or a night and will come back home without a single picture. So those obstacles came as first. I needed to educate myself. And after that, I'm coming exactly to the point of everybody's interest. How did I deal with those groups? That's true that majority of groups coming to Poland for Yahrzeits, there are men only. And according to Hasidic tradition and habit and halacha, in a public domain, male and female words are separated. So you may imagine, for example, this cemetery in Shinew, in Sieniawa, you may see that at the cemetery, only half of matzevot survived. The other disappeared, or they were taken to build a road, or maybe that was useful for people in the village to build their houses. And there is in Oyel the building with the matzevot of the tzaddik Yechezkel Shraga Halberstam. And you may see the group, some individuals who are approaching the place where, of course, as a photographer, I want to be, because my idea for photography is as close as you can get. If I want to make a picture which shows emotions, which shows this moment of the attempt of communication with the absolute, I need to be close. So I started to learn about the halacha, what I am allowed to do, what I am forbidden to do. That was very important, because when you know rules, you can't be also cheated. This is not that somebody will tell you, go, go, because you can't stay here. I know what I can do. For example, I know that if men are inside such an oil, and there is no special part for women, I am not allowed to go there. And there will be a big balagan if I will start to, push my presence there. But in the same time, I understood that I can stand, for example, as you can see, I am something like 50 meters from the oil, and nobody can tell me, thank you, goodbye, because this is the place where I can stay. So the recognition of the potential of the situation, which I knew was extremely tough for a photographer, was the basis. After that, I started to look for opportunities. What are my chances to start to be close to those people? And it came with two things. First of all, there were some places like Lelov, like Lizhensk, like Rimanov, like Bobov, with the biggest yurtsites, where I was coming back year after year for 11 years. So even if in the beginning I was a total stranger and nobody knew who I was, what I wanted, and of course there was a fear that I may break rules. This is probably the worst for a Hasid who came to pray on a tzaddik grave. He doesn't want to be, first of all, distracted by some strange woman, but that would be, beyond belief if she did something what will violate, his tshuva, his attempt to be as pure as possible in the moment of asking for forgiveness and for some new blessings. So after a while, after let's say 2 years, 3 years, people started to recognize me, and they understood that that I'm coming there for a reason, that I am not just a passerby, or I am not just taking those pictures and hiding files to my computer. Very early, I started to make exhibitions, and my work started to be recognizable, also by some Hasidim. And so it helped me to make them, how to say, more flexible or more tolerant for my presence. It doesn't mean that somebody told me, oh, hey, how are you? It's so nice that you came again. And we are opening all the doors and you can come in. No, but they can behave like not seeing me, like I was invisible. So year after year, I could make one step after another, and those close-ups, which, for example, you are seeing now, they're really close-ups. I had to be close, and as you can see, those people are not distracted. Though we can see the comfort of those people. Why? Because somehow they understand that my presence is the presence of somebody who is documenting the situation, but I will not play any active part, which can really break the moment and the situation. What was the biggest blessing during this time of my work in Poland on Great Tzaddikim Yortzeit? As a woman, as an outsider with a big camera, of course, I was the last person who can make a real connection with Hasidim. And that's true that most of Hasidim will never speak to me directly. This is according to the tradition. This is according to how they behave at home. I mean, at home, where they live. Doesn't matter if this is Borough Park, Williamsburg, Kiryas Yoel, Monroe. even when they live side by side with the neighbor for, I don't know, 30 years, they will never say shalom to his wife, because this is pasnish. It is not that they don't respect this person, but this is not a habit to talk to a strange woman. You are talking to your wife and to your family, to your mother. That's all. And you are not speaking to a Goya, which is slapping with her camera through the cemetery. What was a special blessing at this point? Meeting this guy. This is Reb David Zinger, Bob of Husit, the grandson of the rabbi of Pilzno in Poland, close to Tarnów, before the Second World War. Reb David Zinger was born in New York, but thanks to his father's teachings and activity, because he ran the synagogue, which was also open not only for Hasidim, he started to come to Poland pretty early in late 80s, because please remember that there was a huge gap of the communist times when people from abroad weren't really allowed to travel to Poland. They require visa, and in most cases, those applications were rejected. So in fact, Hasidim started to come back to Poland in late 80s, early 90s. There were some individuals also in let's say 70s, but as I said, individuals. And this is a striking story which is hidden behind the first trip of Reb David to Poland, because he came with his father to this small place called Pilzno, and they were looking for traces of a Jewish community who were living there, and there was nothing. Reb David's father remembered where were their home and where were the cemetery, but there was nothing like a visible sign. So according to his memory, he found the river, and he remembered that from the river, they have to schlep through the meadow to a cemetery. It occurred that the cemetery was totally abandoned. There was no fence, there were no matzevot. And they saw a Polish farmer who, when he saw two Hasidim, he said, "Oh, so you came back. So now I don't have to look after this place anymore. Now this is your turn." Reb David's father decided to make a fence and to revive this place as a Jewish cemetery. What happened? And that was a big work. They had to cooperate it with some Poles. That was the moment when Reb David Zinger made a very profound friendship with Adam Bartosz, director of the regional museum, and they cooperate even since. And during that time, Reb David Zinger's father said, "This is the first time when you witness and you participate the struggle to revive the place connected with Jewish heritage in Poland. This is the first time, but not the last time. Since this moment, this is your mission, this is your life mission, to return here and to look after places which are losing their status." And since then, Reb David made many fences, ochelim. He cooperated with various Hasiduts, helping them to restore the synagogues and the cemeteries. And the interesting thing is that during that time, his father said one thing more. He said, when you will be continuing this work, please remember, you are not allowed to take a single penny for that in return, because this is your tikkun olam. So even when Reb David Zinger is trying to restore some oil or building some memorial, matzevot, and so on, the money which are collected by, for example, some Hasidim connected with some place, they are transferred directly to the person who is building this memorial, matzevot, or this fence, not having a single penny even for a while.
So this is a great segue.
This is a beautiful story, and this is the beginning of Reb David's struggle on restoring a Jewish memory, this material side of Jewish memory. And why did I say that that was the biggest blessing when I met him? Because he and his wife, Naomi Zinger, who are living in Borough Park in New York, from that moment when we met in Bobov at the yahrzeit of Shlomo Halberstam, the tzaddik which founded Bobov dynasty, they started to offer me helping hand. For example, when I was looking for the information, if there is any group which is coming, let's say, to Rimanov for the yahrzeit of Menachem Mendel, at least I had this one person who I can call and send a message and get some information back. Since then, we started to be very close. First, we were friends. Now I call Zinger family my family, because they open not only their doors for me, but they opened their arms. I know the whole family. I took a part in many pilgrimages. They participated, taking me as a friend with them. So we spent a lot of time together. I was very lucky to be invited for many simchas, for many family occasions. And it lasts for something like 12 years already. So, you know, this is a big tradition of cooperation.
So this is a good segue.
And we talk.
This is a good segue into your second project, which is the Rekindled World.
Yes.
Because, so can you give us a little bit about that as well?
Yes. So, so when I was schlepping, when I was traveling to all those abandoned cemeteries in Poland, of course, at once I understood that my second goal should be traveling to the place where those people are approaching Poland. I mean, places where Hasidic communities moved from Eastern Europe, mostly after the Second World War. However, there are some places like, for example, Antwerp, which were also active before the Second World War, because many Hasidim, especially those who were economic immigrants, they settled there. So, so my first steps, of course, I made in Israel. I went to Yerushalayim, and at once I went to Mea Shearim, where, for example, this picture was made. And believe me that for somebody like me during that time, still not knowing too much and not having any connections and any recommendations, that was a pretty mission impossible to survive. Why? Because when Hasidim are coming to Poland, as I said, they are more or less flexible. they understand that they're coming to places connected with their family tradition, but now there are no Hasidim living in those places. So of course, those strict rules they are used to, they don't really adjust to Polish reality. But when they are in Israel and they are in Mea Shearim, they understand their power. For example, when somebody approached Mea Shearim, the legendary, the iconic Hermetic place, the district, Hasidic district in Yerushalayim, he may see a big posters hanged above every street leading to a district, with the information that this is a Hasidic place, this is a Hasidic district of people who chose the Torah as their way of life. So they are begging eventual visitors not to treat this place as a touristic place. So they ask them not only to behave modestly, but also, for example, to look according to halakha standards, to modest standards. So what it means for a woman: long sleeves, no collar, no a long skirt, and favorably stockings. For men, those are long pants and something which covers the head. At once, everybody knows that this is a territory where the modern side of Israel, like Tel Aviv or the other part of Jerusalem, those regulations of colored people were often exposed and behave freely. It doesn't adjust. So everybody was telling me, okay, you can go there, and of course you can try to take your camera, but we guarantee you that you will not be able to make any single picture, because those people can be aggressive, those people can shout or I don't know what. So first of all, I was scared. when I came there for the very first time. And that was even more funny. One of the Hasid who I knew from Poland, they offered me a ride. He told me that he would take me with his car to show me Mea Shearim. It occurred that he did it only under the condition that the windows were black, so nobody could see us from outside, that he is driving with a woman at the back seat. And I remember when we were driving those extremely narrow streets, I really had the feeling that we are driving the Poland of, let's say, end of 19th century, because the setting is so strikingly different than our modern world. And of course, people look totally different. I mean, this costume, let's say, the capote, the payas, the hats. This is exactly how grandfathers or great-grandfathers of contemporary Hasidim look like. And we have a testimony on pictures made by Alter Kaczyzny or Roman Wiśniak, those genius Jewish photographers who managed to make pictures of Yiddishkeit before the Second World War. So that was the beginning. As you understand, I began with nothing. How it happened that after a time, I became friendly with those people. And as you can see, they are smiling to me. Now you can see one of families, Hasidic families, which are so close to my heart. They are Ger Hasidim. So their dynasty comes from Góra Kalwaria, close to Warsaw, close to Warsaw, before the Second World War. And Ger Hasidim are pretty well known for being especially, how to say, I don't want to say cold, but reserved towards strangers, and men towards women. This amazing couple of Miriam and Chaim Yankel Zilberberg, I met in Poland. They used to work here before the pandemic times. And that was such an enlightening moment when we met, because we started to travel together. And you know, every opportunity of such a meeting, this is not only the opportunity to learn a lot. I was talking to Ari Katz. Now I'm trying not to do that. He was surprised that I'm using Yiddish words and Hebrew words, although I feel disabled because I don't speak Yiddish or Hebrew, unfortunately.
Okay, I just this second got a chat that says, I love the speaker's Yiddish expressions. She has the authentic Eastern European pronunciation. So the chat people have been saying how well you speak the words that you speak.
The truth is that I speak like my friends speak. So they have this Yiddish, this Galicianer of Polish accent, not me. I'm just taking it from them. But what I wanted to say, concluding this another opportunity to meet the fantastic couple of Silberberg. We learn from each other. I learned a lot about Jewish world, I mean Hasidic world, things which are not really well known for outsiders. In the same time, I have the feeling that my presence is kind of a lesson for them too, because maybe this is the first time in their life that they have opportunity to be close with a Goya, with an outsider. And please remember that, especially after Second World War, for absolutely understandable reasons, Jewish communities, especially religious communities, were totally reserved towards Poland, towards Polish people, or in general Eastern Europe, because of course so many terrible things happened here, and they have fresh memory of that. They understood that the fact that, for example, in Poland only there were 3 million of Jews killed. It can be erased in a memory. If they wanted to continue their identity, they understood that this time they can't mingle with outsiders so freely as sometimes they used to do living in Eastern Europe. So the walls in literal sense and in metaphor started to be built really, really high. All of the sudden, after such education and extremely painful heritage of their Holocaust survivors' ancestors, the Goya with a camera comes, and you know, she wants to stay. She wants to talk.
We just have a few more minutes.
She's saying that she wants to make a Kiddush Hashem.
We have a few more minutes. What were some of the most surprising pictures you were able to take?
You know, in fact, every picture I took has a story. Because as we started to say, there is nothing like an easy situation for me, an outsider and a woman in a Hasidic world, which is irregular. Everything, in fact, happened with some anecdote hidden behind. For example, this is again Mea Shearim and the Kala, which is davening, which is praying just before she will leave her home to Huppah. This is the moment of the last seconds of her being in her family house. And you understand that if I was a real outsider, I wouldn't have any access to such a situation. But I am a family friend. This is the well-known family of Yoelish Kreuz. He has 18 children, which lives in this apartment of 60 square meters, which is pretty shocking. And we know each other for many years. I was recommended to them, and I started to keep coming back to Jerusalem for almost all Hagim. So our connection was growing naturally, because I didn't disappoint it. That wasn't that, you know, I came and I demanded something, that, for example, they will be posing for me, or they will make the rules broken. No, I am a documentary photographer. So every time I'm witnessing some scene, I'm only an observer. I'm not expecting people to pose on or making anything especially for me, because I believe in reality, and I believe in the power of life. I think that it really transports unusual energy. But for example, this rabbi, he's a very well-known figure in Sao Paulo, in Brazil. And, you know, to get to his house, when I came to Brazil, where I have an exhibition, it was a big, very complicated construction of recommendations, of some checking out, of some tests. And finally, I was invited to the sukkah. That was the sukkah time. Of course, I had to have let's say, a bodyguard, a man who accompanied me, because being a woman alone, that wasn't possible, that I'm entering the sukkah of a rabbi, even when his wife was there. And of course, even when I came with the bodyguard and with all those recommendations, he made unbelievable exception that he agreed for that. This is another high Strimal rabbi in Sao Paulo, Rabbi Ilovitz. And I can tell you the anecdote or the story which really warms my heart every time I'm thinking about that. That was the same situation. I came with, let's say, the assistant, the Jewish boy who was my guide. Of course, I was recommended. We were appointed. Of course, we had to be sharp on time. Of course, there was Rabbi Ilovitz's wife checking out if this woman behaves properly. And this is his office. We were talking for an hour. I brought my first book, Returns. I was showing him various places in Poland connected with Hasidic tradition. And because his family is coming from Poland, he was so taken with all that. And he was apparently impressed that I know the names of tzaddikim and the stories, and I was in all those places. At the end of our conversation, he asked me when I will be coming back to New York, because I came from New York. And I told Friday morning. And all of a sudden, you know, he was frozen. At once I understood that the issue is Friday. Hasidim don't really like to travel on Friday, because even when the flight is in the morning, there might be some delay, you know, and they can possibly violate the Shabbos. So at once I understood that he has this problem because he thinks that I was Jewish. And I told him, Rabbi, I am tzniua and I was in all those places, but I'm not Jewish. And you know, he looked at me with astonishment. He just couldn't believe that. And when I say when I stand up and I wanted to say goodbye, he gave me a brucha. He gave me a blessing, and he was telling, you know, those standard things, you know, to be happy, to have a parnasa, to have a healthy child, and so on. And at the end, he added something what wasn't standard at all. He told me, and when you will be finally ready, please remember that Jewish people invite you. He didn't ask me if I want to convert, but he just
opened the door.
Yes, and this is unusual because you need to know that Hasidim, except Chabad, which is a Hasidut with a totally different philosophy in this regard, they don't make any attempts to make others become Jewish or Hasidic. That's important to have a good yichus, and the good yichus is coming with genes, with blood, with generations, you know.
As we end, if you could just go through a few more pictures and tell us a little bit about your inspiration or what you hope will be your next project that you are, I know, working on and trying to get started. But make sure you get to the sync picture for me, please.
So my last book, which I published 3 months ago, is called A Rekindled Word. This is the cover, and this is my second album. The first one was called Returns, and this is a collection of photographs of great tzaddikim yortzites in Poland. Over 30 places connected with great tzaddikim tradition, and now I made this another step. The first, after the Second World War, visual panorama of contemporary Hasidism, the revival of a Hasidic world. I was traveling to Hasidic enclaves like Antwerp, like Stamford Hill in London, of course Israel, various places, Bet Shemesh, Bnei Brak, Tzfat, Mashurim, New York, Kiryas Yoel, Monroe, Monsey, Palm Beach, Brazil, Outremont in Montreal. So I was in 3 continents, looking those old familiar faces of Hasidim who disappeared from the landscape of Eastern Europe and regretfully also my country, but whose descendants are alive. And this book is all about this gewaldic, this heartwarming and so elevating message that the world, which was sentenced to death, with this terrible loss which happened during the Second World War, survived. Not in the same numbers. Those numbers are not comparable. But there are some who survived, and they made best to save the identity. So again, traveling to New York, being in Borough Park, you can have this illusion that this life, Hasidic life, really continues. So
tell us about your next project.
Okay, so I I deeply believe that when I will complete A Rekindled World, I will be done with my Mission Impossible mission. With Mission Impossible struggle with, because this is hard. Even when I'm telling nice things about my friendships, please remember that I'm still who I am. And in almost every situation, I am with Hasidim, I am checked, I'm regarded as an outsider, and it is never easy. It is always kind of an exception, but it's hard. It's emotionally hard. It's physically hard. But when I started to make a book about the Hasidic world now, contemporary world, I understood that there is one gap more which I want to fill, and I would like to end my Hasidic trilogy with a book about Hasidic women. Why Hasidic women? Because according to halacha and custom and tradition and pasnisht, Hasidic women are not included in visual testimony as publications, as newspapers, magazines, albums. I have many albums of Hasidim, mostly made by Hasidic photographers. For example, there is an album about Ma'asharim, last 15 years of Ma'asharim. And when you are looking at those photos, page after page, you are seeing big rabbanim and some official situation. There is something like, let's say, 100 of pictures. There is a single silhouette of a woman, not a single face of a woman in those pictures. So what it means that all of a sudden we have a testimony of a documentary situation, but with a raising of 50% of the population, women. For Hasidic photographer, this is not possible to make a publication of women, because at once he would be judged and he would be rejected as not obtaining rules. As an outsider, I still have this liberty that I can make those rules a bit more flexible, and still have this possibility of, let's say, empathy towards the Hasidic world, which lets me have a hope that this is the hardest project I made about women who very often are taught not to be exposed, to be hidden, to be so modest that they reject the cooperation with a photographer themselves. And it's very hard to make a project about somebody who doesn't want to be shown.
So I'm going to ask you one last
of most of women.
One last question before we end, because we're over time. And so maybe if you stop your share, I can ask you just one last question.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Great. So people have been wondering what the reaction is when you take the pictures. Do you have books that are, that you've published, that you sell the individual prints?
This is my last book. This is A Rekindled World. And this is a book which is totally sold out, returns, povraty.
And we're going to Ari will send in a follow-up email, the way that people can order a book from you. And I should imagine that if they order it directly from you, you will be happy to sign it for people.
It's not available anywhere else.
No. Okay, so...
There were some copies in Eichler's in Borough Park, and that was the first Hasidic bookstores which decided to have the copies of the book, which includes, for example, the images of women. But there were not too many copies, and the rest I have, yes. Mm-hmm.
All right. And so people are wondering what the reaction of the people whose photographs were taken. Did you need permission from them, and what was their feeling about all of that? So that I think will be our last question. After you answer that, if people want to stay, we have a 3-minute video that of her work that we will show as people start signing off.
So that's another obstacle which I find as tremendously difficult for me. Because very often I witness some situation, or I participate in some, let's say, a family gathering or family ceremony, and it's fine. I mean, those people don't mind that I make pictures. But when I approach them afterwards and I'm saying, look, I'm making a book, and this picture will be shown in my book, they at once start to calculate. They understand that my publications have many reviews, many covering. They're really visible around. So, for example, the neighbors will know that I was inside this home, and I am so familiar with this family. And not everybody understand that. So very often people who, as I said, they're extremely kind, they're extremely warm and generous, and are very happy to cooperate. When it comes to publication, they really have a profound problem. I can give you one example, which in a way is funny, in a way, sorry to say, was a bit pathetic. I was extremely sorry that it ended this way. 2 years ago, I was in Stamford Hill. That was my first time there. So as always, that was difficult because I had to break this glass ceiling over the community, which didn't know me. I didn't know them. That was hard. I was invited by a Hasidic family with a big, beautiful yichus, a nickel of a descendant of one of the most important tzaddikim from Poland. And I stayed with them, with the whole family, for a week during the Shviyas, during Shavuot. We became friends. And during all those time of preparations to a Chag and the celebration, we were together. I refrained from making a lot of pictures inside home, but once I made a picture of a Hasid who was my host. He was just standing at the staircase, nothing more. He was just standing. But he wasn't in his coat and he wasn't with his hat. Of course, he was totally dressed with a tzitzit and everything was tzniua. But that wasn't an official situation outdoors. When I approached him, when I wanted to include this picture, which I regarded as pretty private. There was nothing special about that. If you saw that, probably you thought, oh, this is just an ordinary picture. But for me, that was very special because it showed privacy. And I want to show this human side of Hasidim, not this only official Rabbanim, well lighted, some privacy, some moment of being alone. So I approached to him with this question. That was a big brainstorm with his wife. And the answer was no. And even when I was trying to explain that this is nothing wrong about that, they realized that, they might be rejected by the community, or there might be some unwanted discussion. Or, for example, because they have still minor children, when they will start to make a shidduch for them, there will be a problem that somebody will say, oh, look, but this family cooperated with this Goya. Those are not the rules we wanted to follow. You understand? So very often there are such a unexpected problems, and I mean, of course, I had to respect their decision. I didn't have choice, but to be very honest, I was feeling hurt, because after all this week, I wanted to use one picture. There was nothing wrong with that, but still, they didn't want to take this risk.
Right. So thank you very much. Everybody has. We will definitely have you back in some way to CSP. There is no question about that. We thank you. I'm now going to play the video. Please stay around to watch. It's 2 minutes and 49 seconds or something. And then we'll have our formal goodbye. Okay? Let's see. Now we just hope it works. We see the screen?
Yes.
היום נכבוד לבני ימינים זהירים לשומרו ובויסיבונים אוי חוקיק בשני ליכוי סבונים מי רוי בוינים ויאמית קויה Shom yunichigi yaikoya Ivu ichilam divri yesyacha Ui nase v'nishma omrik yecho Ifos chive yoni Hashem echod Uri chanoi sain la yu I've Bekot shoy behar hamovoy yoy mashvi zukor beshumoy bechol bekidov yachad ligoy chazayk mosnayim v'yamitz koyah
I want to thank you so very much from everybody at CSP. And it's just been wonderful. We've gone on for way more than our allotted time, and virtually everyone has stayed. That's how inspiring you are to all of us. On behalf of Ari, who's not with us, I thank all of you. I thank our donors. I thank Tali, who recommended you to us. And we thank you very, very much. It was a marvelous, marvelous program. Everybody have a great day, and we hope to see you on our London tour on the morrow. Bye.
Bye.